You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
J.T. Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Eileen Moskowitz-Palma.
Authors. I have a fantastic new service to tell you about. It's called PubSite. PubSite is a service to help you build your very own website, your home on the web, where you can promote your work and give your fans a place to connect with you. PubSite is a website platform that allows every author, regardless of budget, to have a great-looking professional website, developed by the book marketing professionals at FSB Associates. PubSite is the new, easy-to-use DIY website builder developed specifically for books and authors. Whether you're an author of one book or 20, or a small publisher, PubSite allows you to build, design, and most importantly, update your website pain-free. No need to be dependent on a designer or webmaster to make a small but costly change to your website. Save the money and do it yourself. PubSite is the best platform for authors because it's a book-centric platform. PubSite was built just for authors and small publishers. Every design, feature, and layout is book-centric. They have customized designs for you to use. It's easy to build. No coding or HTML is necessary to create a stunning, professional-looking website with all the features you want. Get a custom domain name, yourname.com. It's simple to update. You can add all of your books, add a blog and a book tour, sell from any retailer, manage your email list and social media, and even do e-commerce. Build your website with a 14-day free trial, then pay just $19.99 per month, which includes hosting. And we offer packages starting at $499 to set up the website for you. Pub-site.com, the place to help authors find their home on the web. Before We Ever Spoke by Dan Largent. Cleveland, Ohio, 2006. After a chance encounter, three people soon find out that life can sometimes thrust us into the public eye, even when taking great measures to avoid it. Cooper Madison was the best pitcher in baseball after being drafted number 1 overall in 1996 from the small Gulf Coast town of Pass Christian, Mississippi. 1 year after announcing his sudden and shocking retirement, he finds himself seeking anonymity in Cleveland, Ohio. Kara Knox is the youngest sibling to 3 older brothers. After a tragic work accident to her closest relative, she has built up a tough exterior as she begins her final year of college at Cleveland State University. Jason Knox, Kara's oldest brother, is the lead detective on Cleveland's Edgewater Park killer case. After months without a suspect, he's feeling the heat from his media-hungry chief. Serendipity intervenes, and all three learn that perception and reality are paths that rarely ever intersect. Before We Ever Spoke by Dan Largent. Hey folks, you really ought to check out Patricia Gillam's Heroes of Corvus series. Book 1 is called A Superhero's Duty. A fight between a second-generation superhero named Red Bolt and a villain for hire named Icarus goes terribly wrong, resulting in the drowning deaths of 3 innocent civilians and orphaning a 6-year-old boy. Racked with guilt, Red Bolt visits Cameron Wilson at the hospital every night and won't leave the boy's side until he falls asleep. Befriended by a night shift nurse, the man in costume begins to disclose what really happened after the fight and why he feels the death of Cameron's parents and sister fall on his actions. A superhero didn't survive that night, and Cameron and the rest of the city are not out of danger. A Superhero's Duty, Book 1 of the Heroes of Corvus by Patricia Gillam. Get this series now. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have Eileen Moskowitz-Palma on the show with me. She has an awesome new book. It's called Camp Clique, and it's in the Popularity Pact series. And I tell you what, Eileen, I wish my kids were a little bit younger. My three girls are all college age and over, but I really wish that I would have had this book, 5-10 years ago. I really enjoyed it. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I love listening to your podcast and hearing about other writers and how they came to be publishing and how they wrote their stories. So I really appreciate you having me on today.
Oh, you're so welcome. And, in this time where we're all sheltered at home and feeling disconnected from the world, isn't it fun just to get together and talk about things that we all love?
Yes, I agree. I feel like in this time of social distancing, we need to just find unique ways to come together. And every time I meet a new person, even if it's virtually, it feels really good right now.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I can't think of anything that I would rather, talk about and get to listen to people go on about, and that's storytelling and book writing. It's just my, writers are my favorite people in the world.
Mine too. So we're in good company with each other today.
That's right. Eileen, we begin each show with the same question, as you know, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
So, like most of the people you've interviewed, I have loved books my entire life, and I can't remember a moment when I wasn't reading and thinking about books. But in terms of knowing that I was meant to be a writer was back in 6th grade during language arts class. It was my first experience in a writing workshop setting. And my teacher, Mrs. Von Kanta, did a wonderful job instilling this confidence in me. I really think, I'm a former elementary school teacher, and I really believe that the confidence that we can instill in kids when we recognize gifts that they have is something that can be built on as they get older with other life experiences, but it has to start somewhere. And so she pulled me aside and told me that she thought I had a gift in writing, and it was really special to hear. And she helped foster this love of writing fiction. The interesting thing for me is right now, I'm not just a novel writer, I'm also a novel writing instructor at Sarah Lawrence College's The Writing Institute. And when I reflect back on that 6th grade experience, it was literally just like my life now. Half of that writing workshop was about me getting my confidence up and learning to write. The other half was about partnering up with other kids and critiquing each other's works. And I found that I loved looking at someone else's story and helping them problem solve and helping them move sentences around or move paragraphs or choose different words to make their stories better. And so during that class, I found a love for both of those things. And here I am as an adult doing those very same things.
I love to highlight stories of teachers, especially who have made an impact in a young person's life, and offer that little bit of encouragement, because we know that the writing life can be a lonely one. I mean, even without social distancing, the things that we do are kind of we sit in a room by ourselves a lot of times and just make up stories. And I love that, when teachers give that encouragement, because so many times, you look back in those dark times and you hold on to those encouragements and they come back to you. And it's just an amazing thing. It takes so little to encourage someone else, and it pays dividends over and over again. But I love the story that you tell of a teacher who that not only encouraged you, and so, so thank God for that. But fostered an atmosphere where you could encourage each other. I don't think we see enough of that. That's I love that, and I hope we see more people that will encourage young people to encourage each other and to help each other in that way.
Doing that, it's interesting. I started doing these writing camps virtually right when the lockdown or the pause or whatever you want to call it, wherever you're from, right when the world pretty much shut down. I was devastated that I wasn't going to get to do school visits because, like I said, I'm a former elementary school teacher, and that's what I couldn't wait to do. I had visited a school in the Bronx that last week before schools closed. I visited a creative writing club. And one of the things I did with the kids is compliment sandwiches, which is something I can't take credit for. When my daughter was like in second grade, I think one of the teachers did that. And it's where you pay someone a compliment, and then you give them some kind of a critique, and then you finish up with another compliment. And so in this creative writing club, I gave a writing prompt, the kids wrote, and then we practiced giving critique that way to each other. And so the kids would give each other a compliment, then they would ask a question, something they wanted to hear more about, and then they would give another compliment. And I couldn't wait to do that in classrooms. And when all the schools shut down, I was devastated because that's what I was looking forward to doing, is instilling that love of writing and the partnership and the writing community with kids, just like the experience that I had. So I started virtual writing camps, and I have worked with almost 100 kids in the first 3 weeks of doing this program from all over the country. And I was able to watch kids from New York give a compliment sandwich to a kid they just met in California. So I can't even tell you how amazing this experience was. So in this time of social distancing, I was bringing kids together through writing, and I was helping them see that it doesn't always have to be alone, and we can help each other be stronger writers by giving powerful critiques. So it was really fun to be able to do that.
I love that. Did you study writing in college?
Yes. So I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to be a writer. I didn't necessarily know that I was going to end up a writing teacher. I wanted to teach elementary school and then at some point down the line write a novel. So I double majored in elementary education and in English. And that was in undergrad. And then as an adult, I studied where I now teach at Sarah Lawrence College's The Writing Institute. And it's a continuing adult education program where you don't have to be matriculated into an undergrad or an MFA program. Anybody who's interested in any kind of writing can just come and take a class, whether it's on poetry or flash fiction or novel writing. And so I studied there as an adult, and that's where I now teach.
When did you decide to get into writing for younger readers? Was that something that always interested you? Was there a life event or something that gave you the idea? When did you start thinking about writing for this audience?
Well, I always thought I was meant to write women's fiction, and I published a romantic comedy in 2014, and I thought that's the kind of writing I was meant to do. But all of a sudden, I was in the car with my husband and daughter, and this idea came to me about this book series. Did you read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic? You know how she talks about these ideas, almost like these beings that can kind of come to us, and if they make sense to us, we can accept that idea and do art based on it, or we can let that idea go on to someone else. That's exactly what happened to me. I was in the car, and all of a sudden, it was like a flash. This strong idea just came to me about two girls, one of whom is very socially comfortable at school and fits in great and is like a queen bee, and the other girl who feels invisible at school. And then they end up at camp, and there's a complete role reversal. And the girl who's socially accepted at school is not socially accepted at camp. And in a flash, I saw that idea. I came up with the title of the series, The Popularity Pact, and I really wanted to write about that. I think the idea came to me because at the time, I was noticing with my own daughter and with my other friends who were mothers, I'm not sure if you've seen the same thing with your daughters or with their friends, that there's this common phenomenon with kids where they could feel really accepted and safe and confident in one part of their life, and they can really struggle in another. So you could have a kid who is very social with the other kids on their travel soccer team. And they could feel like they have a lot of best friends and everything's great, but they have nobody to sit with at lunch at school. Almost all of my mom friends have, who have multiple kids, have at least one child who experiences that, the feeling of I feel safe in one place, but I don't feel like I fit in another. And so because I was seeing that, I think that's why I was receptive to this idea that just sort of came to me in a flash. And then I realized I really should be writing middle grade, because as soon as I wrote the first sentence of this story, it felt so much more comfortable than when I was writing for adults. And I think it's because I miss teaching younger kids, and this is my way to reach them.
And what a great way. We all know that storytelling can do what can't be done any other way, and you can get through to people with storytelling in ways that a lecture never will. And you're dealing with some pretty serious stuff in this book, but in a real fun, lighthearted way that also packs an emotional punch. It's so much fun.
Thank you so much. That's a very big compliment. Thank you.
Absolutely. I saw a video of you reading the Moskowitz Girl, and listening to that video, I was laughing, through a lot of it. But you tell the story of growing up in a neighborhood, mostly Italian, I think I remember, and with the last name of Moskowitz, and feeling, like the odd man out, constantly. Because, everything that happens to us in life influences, our writing in some way. Did those feelings of, I don't know that, if isolation is the right word, but feeling different and feeling, and kind of being constantly reminded of the difference. Did that come out in the writing of this book?
It's interesting you say that. I didn't really think about it in quite that way, but I'm sure that's part of it because, like you said, I grew up in this Catholic town, predominantly Catholic town with this Jewish last name. But on top of that, we were members of the Catholic Church. So my mother's Catholic and my father was Jewish at the time. And when they got married, my father agreed to raise us Catholic, but we weren't accepted by the priest. As you saw in that reading, I was the best reader of the catechism, but the priest did not want me to read it at communion because of my last name. But my parents always raised me to be myself and to not fit into a certain mold and not fit into a certain box. And I think because they raised me that way, it helped me become a writer, because I think part of being a writer is finding a unique path for yourself and not necessarily fitting into one box. It's finding your own space. And so I think that that's really what got me where I am, because my parents always encouraged me. They always raised me to believe that I could do this, I could be a writer, and that my path might look different from somebody else's, but eventually I would get there. And I think that that's what sort of led me there. As far as the characters go, Maisy, so there's two characters, there's B and Maisy. Maisy is more like me than B. So when I was growing up, I was smaller than pretty much everybody else. I was unathletic, so I was always picked last for PE back when they used to let you pick teams in gym class. I was always the last person because I am very uncoordinated. Any kind of sport that involves a ball and other people, I'm terrible at. And I'm not very adventurous. And I get anxious trying new things. And so Maisy has all of those personality traits, and she ends up stuck at adventure camp with all of these sporty athletic girls. So my experience sort of being this person who's not sporty or athletic and is kind of an anxious person, it was really fun for me to imagine what it would have been like for me to end up at an adventure camp like Maisy did. So I had a lot of fun imagining what that would have been like.
I can just imagine. What was the genesis of this book? What was the first idea that these characters came out of?
Well, that first idea was this feeling of, how do I reach kids who are in this situation where they might fit in really well in one place and not fit in another place? I also wanted to touch on what happens when you get dropped by a friend. What does that mean? What does it feel like to be the friend who was dropped? And what does it feel like to be the friend who left someone else behind? And I really feel like that's a big part of middle grade readers' lives. This idea of friendship, and sometimes you could be the one trying to hold on to a friendship when someone else is walking away from it. And so that's really at the heart of this. And also recognizing that authentic friendship is more important sometimes than being popular.
Man, I'll tell you what, and emotions are so high during that time, and the what feels like is going to be life altering and devastating, with hindsight, is not, a lot of times is not earth shattering, but it sure feels like it at the time, and you do such a great job of communicating that emotion. Did you have an audience that you tried things out on? Did you have beta readers that maybe were younger, or how do you make sure that you're hitting those notes and that they are relatable and feel real to readers of that age?
So my daughter now is a senior in high school, but I think she might have been in ninth grade at the time or maybe 10th grade. I can't even remember now, but she was close enough to the age where she would understand what that was like. And back when she was in 8th grade, she had a falling out with her friend group. And so she was the perfect person to take a look at some of these scenes to see if I captured. B was the friend who was left behind. And I really wanted to honor what that feels like, how devastating it can be to be the one left behind, especially now with social media. When kids are dropped by their friend group or dropped by a friend, it's really heartbreaking for them to then see on Instagram pictures of their old friend out with new friends. And so anyway, I was able to kind of reflect on her experience and the things that were the most heartbreaking for her. And unfortunately, I was able to see that firsthand. As a mom, that was one of the hardest things that I ever walked through with her. And so I think that's how I was able to capture some of that emotion. I would have her read also. Sometimes in my head, I would want to express things a certain way, and I would put it on the page, and I would know that it did not sound the way a kid would say it. And so she was almost like my Google Translate. I would show her a scene and say, this is what I'm trying to get across, but I need it to sound like a kid would say it. And she was wonderful about helping me Google Translate things like that. And then I also, for my other beta reader, I have a writing bestie. Her name is Lee Geller, and she is a women's fiction author. And we meet once a week. In fact, she's one of the people I miss the most right now during this lockdown situation. We typically meet once a week. We meet at a coffee shop and we write together. And then we go out to lunch and we write some more. And then we go back to the coffee shop. We spend like a whole day together once a week. And we take, at certain points, when one of us is ready and needs feedback, we'll email the other person, let's say 50 pages to get feedback. And then what happens is we have sort of a shorthand with each other, so that 3 weeks later, after I've given Lee, let's say, feedback on her 50 pages, I've already read all of that. So if she's sitting there at that coffee shop and she's stuck on something, she can look up from her computer and say, hey, I'm stuck here. What do you think? And we can talk about it. And she does the same for me. And that has been instrumental in me on my journey to publishing this book.
We love Lee Geller. She was on the show about a year ago, I think, talking about Trophy Life and when that was newly out. What a great writing partner to have.
Yeah, she has another book coming out next year too. So I'm sure you'll interview her again for that. Yeah, so we really have a great partnership with each other. So I think that helps just to have that second set of eyes who really gets your voice and who you are as a writer is crucial.
Absolutely. When you finished this first book, Camp Clique, did you know that there would be a follow-up? Did you envision that this could be a whole series from the beginning, or were these characters just not done for you when you finished that first book?
Okay, I have to give all the credit for the series part to my agent, Lauren Gallet, because she was the one who recognized that this wasn't one book. So I wrote Camp Clique as a standalone book. And at the end of the book, the girls had just finished up the summer at camp. And I really got across this message that authentic friendship is more important than being popular. And I really felt like I got my message across. And everything was great. And so I submitted, I sent her a query. And when she called me to have a conversation about taking me on as a client, she said, this is actually 2 books. What you wrote is half of a whole. This is really the first book of a 2-book series. And I said, wait, what? And she said, well, you have this pact with the 2 girls. So what happens is we have Maisy, who I said was the queen bee at school, and she ends up at camp with Bee. And Bee is the queen bee at camp. Bee has all these camp best friends. She fits in great. This is her safe place that Maisy shows up and ruins. And Maisy can't handle being at this camp for the whole summer with girls who don't accept her and don't like her. So Maisy is desperate. She makes a pact with Bee. If you help me fit in at camp, I'll make you popular when we go back to school. So Lauren said, we need the school book. What happens when Bee's held up her end of the deal? She's made Maisy fit in at camp. We need to know what happens when the girls go back to school. So, and as soon as she said it, I said, oh my goodness, you're right. I can't believe I didn't even think of it that way. And so I had to go back into the first book and make changes so that it was half of a whole rather than a standalone book. And then I wrote a synopsis for the second book. And when Lauren shopped it around, she had the completed Camp Clique book and the synopsis for book 2. And now I'm wondering if maybe book 2 isn't the end. Maybe this.
I'll bet that there's going to be an audience that really connects with these characters, not just this book, but these characters, and the series continues. I'll bet money on that. Well, this book, the first one, Camp Clique, is coming out just in time for summer. It's out available everywhere now in hardcover, beautiful hardcover, by the way, and Kindle edition. So while bookstores may not be open for another few weeks, you can definitely start readers with the Kindle edition and then pick up the hardcover later. And I know that there's some other options for supporting local bookstores even during the shutdown, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. But the second book will be coming out this fall, just in time for back to school, and we're all hoping and praying that the fall school year starts on time, and we get back to some semblance of normalcy. Are you getting feedback on the first book yet? I know it's just out, but okay. Are you hearing from kids?
Yes, my heart is soaring because, like I said, I did this writing camp with all of these kids, and so I stayed in touch with them. I really got close with these kids. I did these writing camps where we would meet for 4 different sessions for an hour each. By the way, for your listeners, I am still offering virtual writing camps and Zoom book clubs through the end of the school year. There's no cost at all. I ask that people purchase my book, but if you've been laid off and that's not feasible, that's okay too. I'm just trying to offer services to kids. So anyway, I got to know these kids and they have all been so excited about getting their books. And one girl emailed me yesterday and said, I already finished your book. When is the next one coming out? I can't wait to read it. And I almost cried. And then I've had other kids from my writing camps send me pictures and videos of them holding up my book, and they're so excited about it. So I've made these connections with these kids. I thought I was going to meet kids doing school visits. I did not anticipate that I would be meeting kids in this different way. But because I met them in this way, we have such strong connections that I think it makes the experience of reading the book that much more special for them. So they are very excited. They are my biggest fans. Aside from my adult students, I have gotten several really wonderful emails from them. One of my students was saying how my book was this great example, basically, of all the things I've been teaching them about maintaining tension and having multiple storylines threaded through. And so that was a huge compliment that she saw in my book the lessons that I've been teaching. So that was a really meaningful set of feedback too. So I've been getting some great feedback. I got emails from parents that literally brought tears to my eyes because in the writing camp, we worked on writing fiction. I had kids write friendship stories with a conflict in them, like Camp Clique has. And we worked on developing characters, and we worked on creating a conflict and writing stories and sharing. And a lot of the groups by the last day, they were all finished with their stories. They had already shared them. And so I added in this component where we started writing about what they're experiencing being home right now. And some of my writing camp kids have been home for 2 weeks longer than the rest of us because they're from these areas in New Rochelle and Riverdale where families were quarantined. They were like the first set of families who were quarantined in New York. And so I asked them to write about their experiences of being home. And we did it in a fun way. I had them write it from the experience of their family pet, who now suddenly has a house overrun with humans. And so in a positive way, we started processing what they're experiencing. And I got these emails from these parents. I'm getting choked up thinking about it, just thanking me for this experience that I had with their kids. Bonding with them, but also getting them to write about what they're feeling. And one of the moms said she read both of her kids took the camp, and she read their notebooks after, and she really didn't have a true understanding of the raw emotions that they were feeling until she read their writing. And so she said, you have readers in us forever because of this experience. So I have to say those emails, I'm going to cherish them forever. And I just have to hope that the kids that had that wonderful experience love the book just as much as they loved our experience together.
And that is all you can ask for is for someone to enjoy your stories and then love them enough to tell other people and
Yes.
keep coming back for more. I love it. We mentioned earlier that the book is available obviously from Amazon and we'll put links to it in the show notes, but also from Target and some other places. And one of those in particular it supports local bookstores. Tell us about that, please.
Okay, so there's a website called bookshop.org, and I'm pretty certain that all the same books that you would find on Amazon are available on bookshop.org, including Camp Clique. And if you order from that website, it gives you the opportunity to financially support local independent bookstores. There's another website called IndieBound. And on that website, you can type in your zip code and it will pair you up with one of your local bookstores. A third way you can support your local bookstores, which actually several of my writing camp families did, is they just simply went on the website of their local bookstore. A lot of the local bookstores are still taking orders, and they will either deliver them or they're available for curbside pickup. So any of those three ways will help keep our local bookstores alive, because when this is over and we're able to get out and shop again, we need those bookstores. We need them.
We do.
Yeah, so those are three ways you can support your local bookstores. The other options are Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, so pretty much wherever books are sold.
And Eileen, tell people where they can find you online to connect with you and for the online resources that you have and all the great stuff that you offer people. Okay,
so my website is my name. It's spelled the same way it's spelled on the book without the hyphen. So it's EileenMoskowitz-Palma.com. These are the things you can find on the website. Information about my books. Information about how to register your child for writing camp. I'm serving kids grades 3 through 8. And I'm also doing Zoom book clubs. So if your child reads my book and they want to pair up either with a group of their friends or with kids that they want to meet from different parts of the country, I'm offering Zoom book clubs. I also paired up with a high school artist named Ruby Howell. She's a senior and she's going to RISD in the fall. And we made printable, downloadable writing resource sheets. They sort of have a coloring sheet component, they have a writing prompt, and they have room to write. And I'm also going to, at some point, teach a weekly free class for middle schoolers through Sarah Lawrence College's The Writing Institute. So once that's up and running, that will be on my website as well.
I love it. We'll put links to all of that in the show notes of this episode as well. Camp Clique out available everywhere now. School Squad coming up, the follow-up book 2 in just a few months. You can go ahead and pre-order it now so that on release day it'll ship directly to you. Eileen, this has been so much fun talking. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all that you're doing for authors, especially right now. I really appreciate it.